Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. It's Friday afternoon. We're one day closer to Christmas. And I'm Paul John Dykes, joined today by Brian Degnan. You've been on Acsom for ages now, Brian, haven't you?
A few years. I came in just before Ange got appointed, so that summer.
Yeah.
That was I think one of my first episodes was discussion. It's the first time Ange had been mentioned, and we're sort of chatting about who is this guy, what we're doing here. So it's quite interesting to look back on, actually. But yeah, it's funny. I always feel like I still feel like one of the new guys because it moves that quick. Whereas that's been 3 years now. So it's crazy, really.
That's right. That's right. But I do remember thinking back then, Brian, you were definitely one of the contributors who said, you know what, I quite like the idea of bringing in someone from left field, bringing in Ange Postecoglou with this philosophy. And you did speak about it. And obviously, we did enjoy the highs for a couple of years. And then the big fellas moved on and we've had to move on. But we seem to have stuttered along since then. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. There's been a huge development yesterday. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to suggest for a moment that by bringing in the Green Brigade, you wave a magic wand, very much like by bringing back Maeda, Hatate and Abada, you wave a magic wand. There's various different things that need to be right for us to progress. And once we get them all right, and once we go into the January transfer window and bring in this fabled quality that we've been hearing about, if after that it's still not right, then I think we've got issues. But at the moment, I think there are other scenarios at play. You know, there are other circumstances that are affecting the performance of Celtic. And I absolutely don't undervalue the impact of not having the Green Brigade there because, you know, the stadium itself has suffered, Brian. The energy, the positive atmosphere at the ground has definitely suffered. What's your take on the update yesterday that the Ultras will be back in tomorrow?
Well, overall, really happy. I think the first slightly cynical bit, because it's the last working Friday of the year, so I'm in a good place. But the slightly cynical bit would be that the board waited to after Europe because they were scared of UEFA's fines. That's the reality, right?
Yeah.
And then now it's like, atmosphere's not that good. We're not risk anymore. Let's get them back. So I think there's a cynical element there. That aside, I'm happy they're back because I think that, look, the Green Brigade done everybody's cup of tea, and there's things they do that I don't really agree with at times. But what you cannot deny is what they bring to the atmosphere. And also, they're good endeavours as well. Their charity work, their social awareness, the things that make Celtic Celtic. The Green Brigade, you know, for right or wrong, I epitomise that. And I think that I spoke before when they were first banned, and I said that it was a poor mistake from the board, in my opinion, at the time, because if you look at what Celtic's USP is, unique selling point, it is the atmosphere. It is atmosphere, and it's the what makes the club different. You know, more than a club, why be different from other clubs? And I think the Green Brigade epitomise that in a lot of ways. In every way that the board don't, actually, the Green Brigade do. So I think it's really important they're back in. Do I think it's going to make a huge difference to the players or the way we're playing or the issues we have? I'm not 100% sure. But if it makes a 2% increase, then that's good, right? Because you know the atmosphere is going to increase considerably more than that. So all in all, back in. I know there was some behavioural issues, but to blame an entire section and an entire part of the support for some individuals' actions is ludicrous to me. It's absolutely ludicrous. So for me, I'm really glad they're back, and hopefully, you know, the club will realise what they offer, and they'll be quick to bin them off when we get to Champions League next year, because that's always the worry.
There's a couple of points there, Brian, that I think you've raised that are pertinent. The first one being the timing and why now with regards to the ban in the first place. Well, I mean, let's not pretend what the political undertones were at that time, what was going on in the world, and obviously, specifically, what was going on between Israel and Palestine. And if, for example, we went in a UEFA Champions League game and we protested as a fan base, or a section of the fan base protested, then that would put heat on Celtic. And that was going to happen. That was definitely going to happen. Now, there are people in the comment section would agree with it, would disagree with it. That's up for debate. because it all depends on not just your political viewpoint, but whether or not you think football and politics mixes. I think it does. I think Celtic are the very epitome of a political movement, because without the treatment of the Irish diaspora back in the 1840s, there would be no Celtic. So politics and football go hand in hand, in my view. But I absolutely respect other people's views on that. Had we gone into the games, as mentioned, Brian, there would have been protests, there would have been tifos, absolutely. So the timing of it, you've got to look at that and think, all right, has there been similar issues in the past in relation to behaviour? Probably. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a charter. There wouldn't be a safe standing area charter, which we now know there is. Some of you might have known that beforehand. I didn't until obviously this situation where the club and the fans went to loggerheads. So I think it's a good thing overall, because in terms of the atmosphere, it's about margins. We keep going back to margins. We're going to have to ban that term, along with a player being a Rolls Royce and the season being a roller coaster of an experience. There are fine margins. And I think after the pandemic season, we probably appreciated it more, Brian, especially when you speak to people who have been there, both in the managerial capacity as a player. I love interviewing Celtic players, ex-Celtic players, just to try and tap into that. How important are the fans to you? And they're not saying it for lip service. They actually tell you that one of the biggest issues during the pandemic, we signed a lot of duff players. That was an issue. No pun intended with the word duff, by the way. But another issue was the fact that fans weren't in the stadium, and it affected some teams positively and other teams negatively. And it affected Celtic negatively, didn't it?
It absolutely did. And look, just briefly touching on your point about the politics versus no politics, stuff like that. I think it's a bigger question than that. It's do people have the right to an opinion, and do they have the right to express that opinion? If the answer is yes, then people need to relax and let the Green Brigade, whatever signs they want to say, that's it. That's what you accept. If you want to start, editing people's opinions, if people get the right opinions, I think that's a slippery slope, and I think that's where UEFA have found themselves in. So I think the political question, what your politics are, what your politics aren't, where you go hand in hand, etc. I think the reality is, are you allowed an opinion? Are you allowed to protest? In song, we can protest. Then, if that's the case, then I don't see what the problem was, to be honest. But I say that's a sort of bigger question. In terms of and just one other thing on that, I know Celtic were concerned about the fines to UEFA. I think you get fined 15 grand a whip or something like that. They're paying 60 grand a week for Nat Phillips' wages. So I know what one I'd rather have.
I'm astonished with that, Brian, because we were talking about wages during the week, and I think he had been listed on a fairly credible website.
60,000.
And that's astonishing. If Celtic are paying the full complement of his wages, it is astonishing. And the sooner January comes round, the better. I just see it as a black hole of wage after wage after wage. Trim the squad. It also means that you've got a lot of unhappy players. I keep going back to that, Brian. It's like any workplace. If you've got an unhappy section of any workplace, any dressing room, training park, it seeps in. It's like the bad apple in your fruit bowl. It seeps into those around it, that negative energy. So I'm not saying him specifically, but if you've got 12 guys, 15 guys not playing every single week, there's going to be negativity swirling around. There's going to be people thinking the gaffer's this, that, and the other. There's going to be players scoring goals and then doing that. Who's he doing that to? Is it the fans? Is it the media? Is it the management team? That kind of thing does not bode well. You need unity. And I think one of the big parts of that was getting the full fan base in there. I'm looking forward to it. I really am. And it's interesting, though. There's always going to be people who disagree with that. So let us know your thoughts in the comment section. I'm really keen to get your thoughts in. We are running down. Where are we now? The 22nd of December. We're 3 days away from the big one. We interviewed Mialby, Big Johan, on Monday night, and we caught some footage on tape, and we're going to be pulling that together so that I can have a day off on Christmas Day and just sit there and do what everybody else is doing on Christmas Day. But we'll put something out in the channel just in case you get a wee bit bored before watching Die Hard later on at night. Paddy or Lavery, or whatever your Christmas movie of choice is, Brian. Have a think about that and let me know.
I've got several. Die Hard's right up there, though.
Die Hard's, of course, absolutely. This debate every year, is it a Christmas movie? Of course it is.
Yippee-ki-yay, Martin Comper.
100%. Paddy, always an absolute pleasure to hear from you, sir. Afternoon, and bah humbug to all. Yeah, bah humbug indeed. We want to talk, Brian and I, we want to talk about the game specifically. There's been a lot of things swirling around in terms of this disconnect between the club and the fan base, the disjointed nature of the team selection, the lack of style, players off form, which players are on form, what's happening in January. All of that stuff is relevant. Let's focus a wee bit on the game tomorrow and see if we are able to try and distinguish what is our strongest 11, as Stephen Burns says here. Let's try and field our strongest 11 and stick by it. I think that was my thought process, Brian, going into the Feyenoord game. I looked at the Feyenoord game and I thought Feyenoord, Hearts, then Livingston, then Dundee, and try and get that kind of fluidity in the team, the consistency with the selection. And then you go into the Rangers game thinking to yourself, if somebody else is back, great, put them on the bench, might give us a wee bit more depth. I don't think we're anywhere near that yet. And we're 2 games into that 4-game package that I was thinking about. It isn't, for me, it really is important to start getting that identity back within the starting 11. It seems like we're just throwing darts at a board at the moment.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And to quote Mr. Rodgers, I'm no surprised. Where I will defend Rodgers slightly is the fact that I think it's been hard. I don't think there's been at any point this season we've had our strongest starting 11 fit.
Yeah.
You do have to. I don't think it's an excuse. I think the coaching manager should be able to get more at the team, but I think that actually it's hard. We have been missing the players quite a lot of time. However, because of that, that's where I'm surprised we've not changed tact. Like we've been trying to fill a Hatate-shaped hole as that creative midfielder, and we've not done it. So instead of trying to mitigate that and mitigate the injuries to Myers by changing shape, we've kind of stuck by our guns and just tried to plod on regardless, which I think is a sort of weird choice. And I hope that, look, putting a positive spin on it, right? The results we've had, past couple of results have been atrocious, like utterly atrocious. However, you've got to think Rodgers can't see that continuing. As a manager, whether he loves himself more than a club or not, if he does, that's fine, because he has to say, right, I can't allow my teams to keep playing like this. Mm-hmm. Something's got to give. Is it going to be a sharp change of personnel? Is it going to be a change of shape? I've got a wee sort of how I would do it. We'll talk about it later. But I just think that something's got to give. Whether that be the January window, his stubbornness. Chris made a really good point the other day that he felt Rodgers was kind of just, we would describe it as just sort of playing, I can't remember the phrase used, but basically just sort of grinning, no half-assing it, but sort of kind of playing the game, just getting on with things, being a bit passive. And I think now he has to go, right, this is...
laser focus, yeah.
Laser, now we have to go, right, what has to change? Because you can't change all the players. You can't change the board. You can only change what you can change, and that's shape, coaching, and team selection.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the team selection changes we've seen, I think, have been very strange. Like Bernardo, signed for the Champions League, apparently. It didn't make any sense. Turnbull being out of the team, Holmby kind of out of the team.
Lagerbielke can frame.
Lagerbielke can frame. Well,
yeah, frame, how do you earn your Spurs?
Well, this is where it falls back on Brendan, but this is where I think that it may change, and maybe I'm hoping against hope. Maybe it's the fact that I'm about 2 years to finish work till the 3rd of January, and I'm just getting excited. But I think that we will see a change. We have to see a change, and I think it has to be a bold change before January. And look, ultimately, we've been calling things out. It's not been right. I called it at the start of the season. I said I felt there was something a bit of a cloud over this season. I'm sorry for once that I was right there, because it's not what you want to see. But we are still top of the league, and it is still in our hands. And if we get a couple of results, it will kill them, because the tribute act are determined to win in the league now, and we've galvanised them by our sort of failings. If we can take that away and go, no, we've been rotten around, but we're still better. We're still top of the league. and there's money in the bank to improve, then suddenly the tone shifts and the story shifts. And ultimately, again, this sounds like maybe a cynical take, but after January, Rodgers is only himself to blame, or only himself to take the credit for, because it's his game at that stage. Can't he blame the board anymore? Can't he blame the transfers? It's his team. So, and I think, even from a self-preservation perspective, I think that'll benefit us.
Yeah, I think so. Galvanise is a great word, because it often happens in adversity. I know that
it was on my work of the day toilet paper. That's the only reason I come up with it.
Was it? Toilet paper, oh dear. No, it is, because the adversity aspect of it, Brian. You get through a patch. We were talking yesterday, JP and I, about Matt O'Reilly and the fact that there seems to be some kind of connection, friendship between him and Palmer, because they're doing that wee celebration. Like it or loathe it. They've obviously practiced it. They've spent some time on that one. But at the same time, O'Reilly was giving them dogs, and I love that on a football park, because it means that the person that's doing that is not prepared to allow anybody to drop below a certain standard. There's loads we'll talk about as we just work our way through that 11, and I always love to hear your take on things, because often it's about shape and doing things a wee bit differently. Before I do it, in case anyone never noticed, yes, I've replicated JP's feature wall. It's all Celtic stuff, and I just want to point out a couple of things. Let's get this right. There, that's loads of Celtic strips all folded up, and let's do this. Up there is the same. There's probably about 50. In fact, there's maybe even more. And these are the jerseys, Brian, that people have been sending in for the Sell the Jerseys initiative. They're not there permanently. They're there just so that we can talk about it from time to time. Some of them are good to go. They're fully signed. Some of them are match worn. I've got a match worn jersey collector interested in 3 or 4 of those ones. Other ones are just jerseys ripe for signatures that we're going to be working on all year round. So 2024, sometimes it'll be impromptu. We'll grab a jersey, we'll do it online, whatever it may be. The plan was to do an online auction during the charity weekender, but we were all scunnered with the result that I thought that if I then tried to sell some stuff to Celtic fans on Saturday night, they'd have told me to do one. So we will do it when the time is right, and it's all raising cash, of course, for wee Jamie Tierney, and we're going to keep raising cash for the wee fella and his family throughout the year as well. And also, I'm plugging my own stuff that's running about there, Quality Street Gang books and all that, even though you can't buy them anymore. And people are kind enough to send us things, the Celtic Curo guys and different books and all that, and we'll display them behind us. It's very changeable, as is this studio. It's a work in progress, so bear with us until we get it absolute tip-top. It's going to be a lot better once we get the equipment up and running and firing on all cylinders. It's like I'm waiting on that January transfer window, and once after that, everything will be fine, Brian, I promise. Celtic follower, hopefully be a bit more consistent tomorrow, and we keep the same starting squad tomorrow for the next 3 games. I get it. Fed up seeing the lineup changing game by game. Right. Tell me, Brian, do you agree that the side, the shape, the personnel are all resulting in this simply not working? I think there was a few things, and by the way, we need to take a step back to try and figure out what's going wrong here. First things first, people are saying to me, stop saying that you inherited a treble-winning squad. Right, I get your point. We won the treble last season, but there are personnel that are no longer there. Totally get it. Jota, massive loss. Moy, huge loss. A wee bit more understated than Jota, perhaps. Starfelt, a huge loss on 2 fronts. Firstly, as an individual player. Secondly, with the partnership he had with CCV. And then you take a wee step further back. Juranovic, big loss. Giakoumakis, big loss. Because you look at some of these games, you think we need somebody to come in and make an impact. You've got Giakoumakis, you've got which one would you prefer? I get it. It's all hindsight, I know. But yeah, we're weaker. We're weaker in personnel. The transfer window did not help. But in terms of playing to your strengths, I was talking over the last few days, Brian, about saying, right, pinpoint the guys that you know have the quality, play to their strengths. The obvious one, Kyogo. A massive part of it is down to the wing play of what is effectively new wingers that we've been seeing this season. We have seen, obviously, Maeda being suspended and injured. We've seen Abada being injured, the loss of Jota. We've brought in new guys in Palmer and Yang and Tilio. Of the 3, Palmer seems to have done better than the other 2. But it's been interchangeable. They've got different styles, Brian. They're not playing the way we did last season. So, Kyogo, my first question for you, and let us know in the comment section how we resolve this. How do we start tapping back in to the talismanic Kyogo? How do we get a performance out of the wee guy?
So, I think there's two ways to do it. So, I'm going to suggest a complete formation shape when we talk about team selection. But in the immediacy, I think it's clear to me he's not getting the service from Hatate, right? Nobody can find the runs. Matt Riley can do it sometimes, but usually he's in a different position. So I think if you move Palmer behind him, that would make sense to me, because Palmer's never a winger in his life for me. He's not got the pace. But if he was playing as a 10 behind Kyogo, I think he's clever enough to find his movement, or at least his movement's good enough that he could pull someone off that McGregor or O'Reilly could find Kyogo. So I think that would be good. The most obvious answer is stop putting crosses for headers into a guy who's about the size of me. Like every time he scored, almost last season before, it was low crosses across the box.
Yeah,
people were finding him. He was nipping in front of the defender and getting it first. How often in all of Kyogo's goals did he get up for a glancing header to a big cross? And yet every time we touched the byline, we're firing crosses above instead of working it so they go to him. So we're not playing to his strengths, and we need to start. And I think that would be a quick fix without the drastic shift I'm suggesting. I think just moving Palmer inside would be a bit more sensible, and you've got that creative force, because let's be honest, Turnbull's not been doing it. I think I defend Turnbull more than most probably, but he's not interested. He's checked out for me, and if that's the case, then he can go, and good luck to him. Home is a player
to use a JP phrase, if his head's left the building, his boots can follow.
Correct, yes. I think Home is a player I still think's got massive potential, but he's not that type of player. He's almost Matt O'Reilly-esque in it. He can kind of do everything in midfield, but he's not got a real core, like say, playmaker. And Hatate's still injured. So that would be the quick fix for Kyogo, in my opinion.
You were talking about bringing... So you're basically bringing Palmer in like a number 10 in that scenario.
4-2-3. So I think it's not... I'll do my formations separately, but I think a 4-2-3-1 would be a quick fix, because it's Brendan's chosen formation anyway that he always played, and I think if you had O'Reilly and McGregor sort of sitting, and then Palmer in a free role behind Kyogo,
right,
he could take advantage of Kyogo's movement. So even if Kyogo wasn't directly contributing the goals, his movement's still so good, Palmer could find the space and shots outside the box. So I think that would be my fix.
Well, I like it. I like the sound of it, because we definitely do need to try and tap into Kyogo as a force. And when you look at Palmer, of all the players that came in, of the 9 players that came in, the magnificent 9 players that came in, Brian, Palmer is the guy who's been the shining light. I'm not prepared to write everybody off. I think that there's certain signs on a player like Lagerbielke, we'll come back to that as well, that he may well be on his way. It's not worked out for him. He's not the type of player that the gaffer wants. Tilio, clearly a signing that was pushed by Ange Postecoglou. And I'm not just saying Australian player equals Ange signing. Tilio spoke about it, didn't he? He said this move has been in the works for 2 years.
A year, yeah.
Aye, it falls into the Ange Postecoglou era. And Tilio's come in. Yeah, he came in with an injury. He's probably struggled to settle. I think the word is he's struggled to settle. And once he's come back to fitness, he's had a couple of appearances. So I'm not willing to write guys like that off. What I think with Tilio is, you ask the question, is he going to be making that impact this season? And if the answer's no, loan him out. Loan him out and get him games. I think the same could be said for Yang, even though he's made more of an impression than Tilio. I think you ask yourself the question, and if a winger is one of these players that we buy or bring in on loan in January, then I think you could probably afford for Yang to go the same way at this stage. Kwon's got to make a call on him. Is he going to be good enough? Because if not, find him another club. A wee bit Ideguchi style, be hard on the situation, because we just can't keep paying players for not playing, Brian. And they're not going to play. They're not going to play any games of football. They're just training all week. So I think that scenario there, moving Palmer more centrally, leaves you with the 2 options. And Maeda, obviously he's back. You put him straight in, Brian. You put him straight in, and you ask him to play, and I say traditional. the way he was playing under Ange, you ask him to play that way because he's a type of player who can hit the byline with pace, that energy. I think that, if he's not playing, the guy behind him, i.e. Greg Taylor, looks like a worse defender because he doesn't have that cover, he doesn't have the defensive qualities of Maeda. So if he comes in, he gets thrown right in. Who else do you play on the wings? Because I think we're then lacking quality, aren't we? Because Abada's not yet fit.
Yeah, well, this is so. What I would do to change that up. So you're right about the wings. We don't have the wingers. I think Yang has showed in flashes he's decent, but there's a lot of work needing done before he's a player, in my opinion. I know we'll talk about Rocco Vat a lot, but Rocco Vat was a better player, I've seen, than Yang, in my opinion. I think he's almost a bit like, in the first couple of minutes of a game, you can tell if he's going to have a shocker. The ball either run under his feet or he'll do something really quick and knock it by someone. And the rest of the wingers, I say, haven't really been cutting that either. But what I would do is, I think I'd go 3-5-2 and I'd have Maeda and Keel go up front, because Maeda can still defend from the front, but he's a handful for defenders. He's so fast, and him and Kyogo, like trying to mark those two is madness. And then you're not relying on the wings as much to put crosses in, because either one of them will pull wide. So you'd have Hart and goals because he's the only option. I'd have a back three of Welsh, Carter Vickers, and Scales. Then my midfield five would be Johnson, McGregor, O'Reilly. If Hatate's fit, Hatate, I think he's been training, so let's assume he's fit. If not, be home because he's another option, but we'll assume Hatate. And I'd have young Michael Frame left. The reason being, he's played either wide left or left back, so the wing back role's perfect for him. And it means if you're playing that the 3-5-2, if you're defending, you can drop back to a back five and Maeda can pull it wide. And if you're chasing the game and that's not worked, all you then need to do is substitute Welsh for Palma, say. Revert to a normal back four, Maeda out wide, Palma in. So you can change that quite quickly, and I think it would benefit because I think we've looked weak in midfield. Like, we've talked about Kilmarnock, Hearts would get battered in midfield. Not just physically, but we just didn't seem to hit. We just seem to be caught out of possession all the time. Yep. And whenever they broke, we just never had it to track back. So the way you sort of, to mitigate against that, if you're flooding your midfield and keeping it strong, Johnson can still fire crosses in if you need to. He can still pull in. Frame's athletic, young, tall, determined. He's got the ability to just make a difference, have that youthful impact. And then again, you can have guys like Vata coming off the bench, or Forrest. I think Forrest is still a better option than Yang or Telio, to be honest. So that's what I would do. But I think Maeda and Keel up front would be really good, because then Maeda can still give what Maeda gives, because he's not really a winger anyway. They can still give that defensive work and that good movement and allow space for Kyogo without having to line the wingers.
And Kyogo can drift. He's shown that. He played a lot of his football, both internationally and over in Japan, on a more kind of left side of a forward line, Brian. So you can see how that would be adaptable. I think, I don't think it's going to happen, but, Rocco Vata and Michael Frame should definitely be on the bench, over the next few games. I really do think that the youthful, sometimes it's the naivety of youth.
It's the lack of fear, Paul. It's the lack of fear. They're not jaded. And, it'll be funny. People are saying, "Oh, Frame made a couple of minutes against Feyenoord. You think he's a hero?" I that's not the case. But Taylor's been struggling badly this season, and you can't keep putting him in if you're going to keep struggling, because he becomes the fall guy. Because he's not the most popular cat anyway, Taylor. So if you keep putting him in that position, he's going to struggle. At least if you try something different and let the youngster get a try, you're showing a bit of change. You're identifying that left back's a weakness. Let's change it up. Bernabeu's not doing it. You're then satisfying people that say we don't play any academy players. You're showing the academy players we've got a chance. And you never know what the boy can do when a bit of pressure's on. Some players play better when they're in that spotlight and they have to just do it. And if he fails, he's only 17. Would you go back to Taylor? I don't see the risk in trying something like that, especially when you've got an established 11. And to go back to the earlier point, with people saying this isn't a treble-winning squad, it is. The only one that makes the squad weaker, no being there. Moy, you could argue maybe, but I think Moy was quite inconsistent. Jota is obviously a loss. Starfelt, I don't think we've looked weaker defensively because Starfelt's not been there. I think the team's been weaker defensively. So I still think just losing Jota isn't enough to justify the drop we've seen, in my opinion. So my point being, the squad's still strong enough that a youngster coming in shouldn't affect that at all.
No, you're right, and I'd much rather see it, Brian, than Bernabe or Kwon, who got a seat on the bench last week, which I'll never understand it. I'll never understand that over Vata and Frame. I just don't get it. I don't think anything is to be gained by having those two guys. And people might say in the comments, which, there's an element of truth of, they're showing up better in training. We don't see what they're doing day to day. Totally get it. Brendan Rodgers obviously is seeing them on a daily basis, speaking to them one-to-one, knowing what their state of mind is, their frame of mind. Michael Ross, let me bring you up here. Telling one of the commenters to behave. Good on you, Michael. If there's any nonsense going on in the comments, which I can't see simply because of the amount of comments coming in, then try and self-manage it. And if it doesn't work, then we might have to get the big mallet out. Remember Timmy Mallet? And ban you or kick you out the comment section. Not you, Michael. Not you. The person that you are warning. Xander Mack, the game is over. The Rebels have won. Yeah, remember that quote very, very well. Brian Dempsey on the rain-soaked steps of Celtic Park. And that was 30 years ago, next year, believe it or not. And I think there are similarities in that the statement was made. It was basically fan movements that brought about change. Absolutely. 30 years ago, fan movements that brought about change. We needed the business acumen, we needed the money, and that's where guys like Fergus McCann, anyway, came in, and others. John Cain cannot ever be forgotten in that scenario. And I made the comment last night after the Green Brigade announced that they were coming back. The game is over, the Rebels that have won. And it went down a storm. I think it's safe to say, Brian. It went down a storm because of the vast majority of people that realised why I was saying it. It was a board versus supporter scenario. And there was a few Celtic fans who weren't having it, saying that I was maybe that kind of rhetoric is not useful. We need unity. And I'm thinking, come on now. Are we at that stage where you're going to strip back everything and try and find a hidden meaning in it? There's nothing subliminal, right? It was a fan group against the board. They're back in. The Rebels have won. Simple as that. Cheers for reminding me, Xander. I think I've got about 250,000 impressions on that tweet last night. My notifications were hot all night. Here we go. Michael Ross is happy the Green Brigade are back. Double Denim, welcome back to the show. Great to meet you the other night. Afternoon, folks. Great news about the Green Brigade, and not before time. We need unity, and the players need the support. Hopefully, galvanise. There's that word again. The players for the
same
living game.
Paper as me. Same toilet paper. We've done Double Denim. See on your point about the sort of you're really on the ball side, on the Green Brigade side. I think it's a wee bit of nonsense. But what's interesting to me when people talk about the board, it's almost the way people talk about government, because the board are there to service the club. They're just there to help manage the club. They don't own the club. The club's ours. They're there to do the best for the club in their opinion, but it's their club. When that board's gone, the fans will still be there. Celtic will still be there. There's no man or board bigger than the club or the fan base or the people who support it and breathe life into it. So when people say, "Oh, the board rule this and they rule that," do you know what? They should be accountable to the fans. These AGMs are a joke. It's all these censored, safe questions. They'll throw in a wee comment, have a go at Rangers, and people go, "Oh, they're on side." So when people say us versus the board, it should never be that case. It should never be that case. The board run the club on our behalf, but it's on our behalf. So I think, sometimes there's this idea that the board are in charge and we should just do what we're told and kind of fall in line. And I just don't think that's the nature of Celtic as a club at the best of times. I don't like the civil war. I don't like people are all arguing and falling out, and I don't like when people are getting ejected for wanting to punch one of the shareholders or something like that. But I think this idea of stick up for the board or stick up for the fans, I think it's madness to me.
You've got to see some kind of balance. I'm going to bring up some of the comments here who agree, disagree, etc. That's what it's all about. And Donny, tiny hands. 2 questions: do you have tiny hands, and is your name Donny? Who knows? Acsom are deluded. We're deluded, Brian. Every one of us deluded if they think that Rodgers should stay. All joking aside,
going to sack a manager on the top of the league. Absolutely, madness.
What is the repercussions of that, Brian? I've seen a lot of it. Listen, I've seen a lot of it on social media. Some people unhappy with Brendan Rodgers coming back in the first place now think it's justified to say sack him. Seriously, let's look at the repercussions of doing that in December. Whilst, as you quite rightly say, you're top of the league, and in 3 games we play Rangers. We've got a January transfer window. I think everybody at the club now is, I hope, now understanding of the fact that we don't do business the way we just did it in the summer. That was the wrong move. We might get 1 or 2 players out of it if we're lucky. We're going to have to do things differently in January. And it's going back to the point we made at the top of the show, Brian. Let's judge Brendan Rodgers, right, after this January at least. And if there is still this malaise, if there's still the lack of energy, the lack of fluidity in that team, the random team selections, the post-match press conferences and the comments that seem to worry us and concern us about what's happening behind the scenes. If that still continues, let's return to this discussion, because at this moment in time, I think it would basically write off the season, Brian.
It's madness. Look, when we were talking about at the start of the show, going back in time, talking about when Postecoglou was coming in, I didn't want Rodgers back. I said it should be Maresca. I thought he was a better choice.
You were up for Maresca, yeah, I remember that.
I thought he fitted the mould. I thought he fitted the same style of play. I thought it made more sense. Mm-hmm. Now, just because you're doing well at Leicester doesn't mean you've done well at Celtic. I'm not saying that. My point I'm making is, even though I didn't particularly want him back, you can't sack him. We're still top of the league. It's not been great this season. 100%. I've been saying it from the start. 100%. Also think he's accountable for it. I think he's the man in charge. But you're top of the league. We could beat Rangers, win our next couple of games, sign a couple of players in January, do well in the league, and then we regroup in the summer. There's no reason that can't happen. In fact, that's probably the most realistic option that's going to happen. You can't sack him at this stage. It'd be madness. And I don't think he would get sacked because he's on $3.5 million a year in a 3-year contract. So you're going to have to pay him off, because there's no way Rodgers is coming in unless he's got a good payoff if he gets sacked. Also, the fact you've got, is Dermot Desmond going to sack him? I doubt it, because he has egos in the line, which is actually the other reason I think January might be okay, because Dermot Desmond, if he's questioned, will always say, count the trophies in the cabinet before you question me. Mm-hmm. But
especially if you're a journalist.
Especially if you're a journalist, whereas if he's brought in Rodgers and he's probably paying a lot of his wages, I would imagine, because with the pay structure. So it's on him as well. So his ego won't allow for it. So Rodgers will get, I think, in January. And then it's on him. But to sack him is outrageous. And on your point just about the comment section, there's a few tribute acts fans in there, which is beyond insane to me, but fair play. Thanks for watching.
Yeah.
With the comment sections, and I sometimes look at the comments on YouTube and I only ever reply to the positive ones, because there's no point replying to the negative ones. But I'll often reply if somebody's got a point that's different from mine, as long as I'm respectful with it. He says, Brian, I don't think that's right. What about this? I go, brilliant. Never thought of that. But seeing people are abusive, that's why you don't get replied to. That's why your comments don't go up. Disagree all you want. That's what it's about. Paul will tell you, we disagree all the time. Everyone in the Acsom chat disagrees from time to time. Nobody calls each other names and insult to each other personally or starts having to go at each other. So grow up, use a bit of common sense, be respectful, and we're good.
No, exactly. Brian, exactly. You can join the discussion. We've had, not seen them in a while actually, we've had fans of Hibs, Dundee United, even Rangers coming into the comment section and being respectful, and you get what you give. Simple as that, Brian. It's that simple, really. It's simple, basic rule that we will abide by. Robert Highland, we're going to be asking everybody, how do we line up? This is Livingston. This is a team who are fighting for their very survival, and they will lap up Any of these big crosses into the box all day long. We've got to change tact. How do we change it? Robert Hyland, play Awata. I'm a big fan of Awata.
Yep.
I don't think he's done anything wrong this season.
No, I
and
agree.
move Calmac one forward to help unlock the Livy defence. There was a slightly concerning statement the other day against Hearts after the game where Brendan Rodgers spoke about Callum McGregor, Brian, and said he was doing the work of 3 guys out there. That doesn't say much about his colleagues, does it?
No, I mean, Rodgers has had some choice comments over the season. Again, I think I got really nervous about it when it was that press conference and he was asked if he was happy with the window and he just said no, and then sort of backtracked a bit. And I think at the time people thought I was reading too much into it, but it felt like that's Rodgers' first one. There's going to be more.
Yeah.
And I'm never a fan of managers throwing players under the bus. I don't like it. If I was a player, I'd be furious. I'd want my manager to have my back. Kick your head in the dressing room.
Yep.
Because they probably deserve it. But doing it publicly, I think it doesn't often work. Lennon in his second season, second time in charge particularly, was guilty of that, and I think it backfired. And I think Rodgers has done it. I don't think it's worked. So that was surprising. I know he wasn't surprised at the result, which was insane thing to say. But the fact he said he's doing the work of 3 men, you go, well, does that mean Matt O'Reilly's not doing anything? Does that mean Turnbull's not doing it? Who's the 3 men you're talking about? Or are you just saying, are you meaning that as in if he's lazy, he's great, or he was just hovering above everyone? But you can't really say that when you've been beat 2-0. I thought some of his comments have been a wee bit strange this season.
Yeah.
And normally he's a fairly clever operator with what he says, but he's kind of jumped in and just sort of said things, and I don't know. It's very worrying for me when he does that. I don't think it's a good sign. I don't like when managers play games like that. I just think to keep that in house. You don't need to say that. I don't see where you go for there.
I agree, and I think there was occasions, famously in the first spell, where too much was given, Brian, and I raised some concerns a few weeks back, even about the simple things like you're getting asked about injuries. Don't give too much away. Just don't give too much away, because what you're telling your opposition is who's playing, who's fit, how to set up. You're giving too much information there. And that was just a small aspect of it that I picked up on the other week and spoke about. I was chatting with a friend of mine, Hugh, who knows football inside out, and he was saying you don't have to do that.
Keevins, was it? Wasn't it Keevins?
It wasn't Shuggy Keevins. And by the way, I wasn't sure if Pierre Van Hooydonk's impression of Shug Keevins was on the interview. There's a tiny wee snippet, well worth watching on the channel, by the way. He done it even better live on the stage. But Van Hooijdonk, with his big Dutch accent, getting touring about Hugh Keevins, was probably the highlight of the night, I've got to say. But yeah, we were talking about that, and I think you could use the examples of the first time that are pretty infamous now with the Terminado, and you're starting to think, all right, you have no signs fed. He was given too much information, and at this stage, you might think Mikey Johnson has to give you more. You might have to think that David Turnbull has to give you more. There's 2 players that have been highlighted this season specifically. Don't say it. Say it behind the scenes. Don't say it. Don't put it out there. I absolutely agree with that. If we're going to have unity, that is a small element of that as well. I'm going to bring this in here from Barca Boy. We've gone from the Kellys and Whites to the Desmonds, Lowells and Strackens. And when you consider that, I get completely 2 ends of the scale, absolutely, because the Kellys and Whites were not fit for purpose. Listen, they were born into Celtic families, and you all only have to look back on the length of time both families were involved in Celtic, which was year dot November 1887. Absolutely, they were Celtic supporters, but they did not have the business acumen to take us into the 21st century, Brian. They ran the club dreadfully. When the youth system started to dry up and we couldn't tap into it to sell another player, we had an issue because we didn't know how to raise cash. We didn't know how to raise capital. We had a stadium that was falling to bits. It was decrepit. It was not fit for purpose, but it had to be rebuilt because the Taylor report had stipulations. So absolutely, yeah. But I think the point Barca Boy's making here is the nepotism, that aspect of it. The fact that when you've got a situation where Peter Lawwell's son is the head of recruitment and recruitment's not working, what do? I think that is key. That's the key point that I would take from what Barca Boy's saying here. Although, yeah, we've got the business acumen, we've got the accounts, we've got the money, we've got all that side of things, Brian, and that's great. And you need it to be a successful club and run as a successful company. When you have got a situation where that aspect of the job's not working, what do you do with them? Who's firing Matt Lawwell? Nobody.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing about Mark Lawwell coming in. The only thing I would disagree with basketball is about the Strackens. I don't know if that's a fair to include Gordon and Gavin in that particularly, but I see the point. But yeah, I think what was interesting, I remember, I feel as if I'm getting back on our Acsom episodes, but I had said that I thought Mark Lawwell was going to come in as director of football when Ange came in, because I could see it coming, because they'd mentioned him a few times, and I know he's going to head the recruitment instead, but this is where I think it's important to have the balance, and this is why I always talk about we're a very successful business, but we're a poorly run club. And some people think you can't, they're mutually exclusive. No, if you're financially, we're in great shape. You can't argue with that. You simply can't. So financial for a sort of small to medium sized business, with a very, very good nick. However, the reason that clubs in all countries and all leagues have financial people and they have football people, they don't have financial people running the football side. That's why you need a football man at the top of that pyramid, that director of football who handles all the football on affairs, coaching. So you get his recruitment guys come to him, his coaching guys come to him, his manager comes to him, he allocates everything down. He's in charge of that side. That's the job. And then the accountants do the accountancy, the football guys do the football guys. We don't have that. We have Mark Lawwell, who by all accounts, great guy, really good schmoozer, really popular, really well connected. Can he spot a player a mile away? Running the football side of things alongside Nicholson, who was a lawyer. And that's where it all goes a bit wrong. And this is where the balance is to be. And this is what I was talking about earlier about the board are running it. They're running the finances. That should be what they do. Someone else should run the football side of it. So either Brendan Rodgers should have a complete autonomy over it, and then he lives or dies on that, or someone else should be, and he's just in charge of the coaching. We don't have that structure. I've been ranting, raving, and moaning about, I think, since day dot on Acsom.
You have. And people stopped talking about it when Ange was in because things were working.
Because things were going well. So you don't need to talk about it. The same problems that existed during the COVID season, when people were nuts about the board, hasn't really changed. It's just that the football was really good, and Ange was there, and he was such a good statesman that you kind of almost didn't care, because you thought he won't allow that to happen. That's the faith we've got in him. Well, he's there, he'll put his foot down. Whether that was true or no, you don't know, but you kind of trick yourself into believing that because everything's going well. When it's not, you start to see the cracks, especially when your manager is coming out and having wee digs. You start to say, hold on, maybe things aren't fixed after all.
You know, it's brought me to the point as well. You were saying there about Brendan Rodgers. Obviously, we had a commenter in there saying that he needs sacked, and you spoke about the fact that he was Dermot Desmond's appointment. Now, again, listen, you never know 100% until you see it in black and white. But for example, if you read Martin O'Neill's book, which is somewhere on that shelf behind me, great book by the way, recommended. He speaks about the fact that he was Dermot Desmond's appointment. You know, he tells you, and that's basically it. Who else in that tenure has been an appointment by Dermot Desmond? Well, Brendan Rodgers was first time, and we assume he was second time, right? So you can look at the questions and in the autobiographies. Brendan's book's up there as well, by the way. The autobiographies whereby it's like, you know, where did you hear from the Celtic interest from, etc. And it's Dermot Desmond that's doing the deals. He's doing the business. And there's 3 managerial appointments, one being the same guy twice. Where was it that, for example, Peter Lawwell brought in managers? And correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, I'm going to suggest that it was Tony Mowbray, it was Ronnie Dyler, Neil Lennon, and everybody's tried to take credit for Ange for obvious reasons, but Ange Postecoglou, through the connections to Citigroup, Matt Lawwell being part of that. So you do look at that situation and you think, well, if Dermot Desmond's going to appoint somebody, he's not getting sacked. He's absolutely not going to be getting sacked here. What they're going to do is, like what you said earlier, it's the laser focus. It's fine-tuning absolutely everything to make sure we don't make the same mistakes again in January. I think that Brendan has shown his frustrations quite a bit in interviews, which I don't think is necessary. You could be frustrated, but keep it behind the scenes and let's just put it right. And it's not going to be put right exactly in one transfer window, but we can start to take shape as a football team, because I still think we have got the crux. I do think we've got 9 or 10 quality players, and I think we've got 5 or 6 Champions League quality players that we can actually get this season back on track. And the one thing, I'm bringing it up, Estepona Boy, just as we were trying to get positive, Estepona Boy brings in, Inter Milan are going to make a bid for Martinelli. That's the one thing this January the board cannot buckle. They cannot buckle on any bids for the top players, particularly Matt O'Reilly, Brian.
I agree, they shouldn't. I just don't know if that stands. I've told you privately who I think is going to be going in January. I won't say it just because I don't want to go after not, but I think they will cash in on someone in January. I've just got a feeling, because if they can't shift the amount of players they need to shift, and I don't think they will, they're not just going to go Toronto and spend a lot more money. They just won't. So I think they'll probably want to shift someone and replace them cheaper, would be my thing. I hope I'm wrong. As I say, I think any time I make a point that comes true, I almost regret it, because it usually means that something's not gone right. So I hope that's not the case. But on your point about the team, I say to be positive, and I've said it already, I think we will win the league. I think things will get back on track. Longer term, that remains to be seen how much we improve, but I do think we will. I think for all Rodgers' flaws, and there are many, I think he is a winner. He will find a way to get it. Like, I think we'll beat Rangers when we play them. I think we'll have a decent January. I don't think it'll be quite what we expect, but I think it'll be decent enough. And I think it'll see us over the line, and then we reassess in the summer. So there is positivity there. And that's not just based on the fact that, you know, I know we've been poor recently, but we've still got the best squad in the league. We've still got the best potential starting 11, like, comfortably.
Yeah.
They've just not been performing. But if those performances have come, Hatate comes back, Maeda comes up, Kyogo, say he scores a hat-trick tomorrow, he's back on form. Then you get the best striker in the league back, you get Carter Vickers back, Hatate, a creative midfielder, back. Suddenly these things the players that know each other start to take shape a wee bit. Then you get to January, you can recruit. So there's 2 ways this could go. It could either go very wrong or very right. And I think it will go right, but I also think it's appropriate to call out Rodgers, the players and the board, for the performances this season, because we saw it coming, and it's worth mentioning that things have to change before it's too late. It's not at that stage yet. We can still rescue it. And listen, I'll be doing cartwheels in the street and wearing my Brendan Rodgers mask if we get to January and we're still top of the league.
Good
Believe
content.
me. So content, I'll do it in the nude for charity. I won't. It's far too cold. But I think we are in a good place. We're just also in danger of sliding the other way, and that's what we need to correct. And I think that's been the point of the past 3 episodes. Acsom, to say, look, we know we're not in a great place. These are the reason why, but I think there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And it's not blind loyalty, by the way. Robert Wallace has taken us on to the point of the actual game then. How do we line up? I'm going to give you my thoughts. Brian's going to disagree. Throw your comments in the comment section. Please do let us know what you think. I'm going to say this before I read out Robert Wallace's team and lineup formation-wise. Carter Vickers, is he beyond criticism? Has he had a good season? I know he's been injured. Has he been the force that we saw last season, the season before, Brian?
I think what you have to consider is would be worse without him, and I think he's still comfortably our best defender. I think I know he gave away the goal in the Lazio game. Yeah, but then he probably shouldn't have been brought on at that stage either, to be fair, because he'd been injured. And I don't think anyone is beyond criticism. I've said all the time, it doesn't matter who the player is, no one's bigger than the club. But I don't think he's really warranted criticism so far. I know the team's been poor, but I don't think you can single out skills for praise and criticise Carter Vickers for performance. That doesn't align to me. I think. Yeah, I think he's been solid enough, and I think if you remove him, we'd probably be in a worse scenario, to be honest.
Oh, I definitely don't want to remove him for Kobayashi. No yet. But what I do want to see is Carter Vickers, very much like Callum McGregor, like Matt O'Reilly, Joe Hart. Yeah, I'm going to throw his name into the mix, and Kyogo. And I want to see that group of players, Brian, all stepping up, all playing captain's role. I know Matt O'Reilly's that wee bit younger, I get it. But in terms of the players who have been pivotal to our success in the last 2 seasons, I want to see them stepping up. So that's where the onus is on the players. And I use Joe Hart because you know what? Joe Hart has got experience to kill. You know, you look at the length of that guy's career. This is his swan song at Celtic. He knew that Champions League game was his final game at that level. He needs to step up. He needs to command his area because we talk about the defence. Taylor's getting it in the neck, and rightly so. His performances haven't been good enough. It's as simple as that. Yet he starts every game. Joe Hart needs to actually command that area. That's his domain. Carter Vickers and Liam Scales, you know, they have developed, not by design, a partnership. And that's the trio, you know, and that's your bedrock. And from there, you can start building. And they need to actually get, for me, they need to take a huge amount of responsibility between now and the Rangers game. I wouldn't approach the Rangers game the same way that I would approach this Livingston game. And very much like Robert Wallace, I would adopt a 3-5-2 tomorrow with a fully fit, because it doesn't look as though Brendan Rodgers, basically, it doesn't look as though you're going to play the inverted fullback. So if you're not going to do that, you're going to have to change the shape of the team for me. With a fully fit and current players would be Hart, Carter Vickers, Scales, Nawrocki, Kalmack, O'Reilly, Rio. He may not be fit. Maeda, Abada, Palma, Kyogo and O. Right, I'm going to use this as a starting point. Joe Hart's in goals. He is the best goalie we've got. There is nobody else near Joe Hart at the club, but he needs to step up. He really needs to step up now. My back three, the way that I would play that is I would have Scales on the left-hand side, covering the left area, if and when Livingston are on the attack. And you would want them to be at times, Brian, to open up so that you can then hit them on the counter. And that's where the wing play is taken into account. So I'll come back to that. Your man in the centre is obviously Carter Vickers. And your man on the right of the back three would probably be Welsh. And I'm saying that because he's a guy that can cover the right-hand side. Some people might play Alistair Johnston there, thinking that he can like obviously play centre-half and go to the right when you're defending. I get it. So that's the way I would play that. The midfield for me, the five would be Matt O'Reilly, Callum McGregor, and Chimoki Awata if fit. If Awata's not fit, I play home. And the reason I'm playing him is that when you're defending, he becomes your second centre-half. Or he's covering the centre. He's protecting the centre-half area. I don't think...
He controls possession really well, to be fair. He's not the most creative, but he's good under pressure.
Yep, he does, and he breaks the play up. I think Maeda starts and Palma starts, and then that leaves you up top with, for me, I would go O and Kyogo. And I think that what you're trying to do there is if, for example, Palma can't hit that line the way you want him to hit it, you're looking for somebody to overlap him and do that work for you. That's the way I would play against Livingston. And my point that I made about allowing them to attack, it's twofold, right? They're not that dangerous on the attack. Some people might think anybody's dangerous against this defence at the moment. They're not that dangerous in attack, Brian. But if they're attacking, their shape changes, you then get them on the back foot, you hit your wingers, and that's where we open them up. And I think that I said it earlier on, and it's no overconfidence, it's no disrespectful of the opposition. We do have the personnel tomorrow to go out there and win on a canter and win comfortably. And I think it's necessary that we do that. I've heard people also saying we just need a win. But I think the performance is massive as well at the moment, Brian, because we need a bit of belief in that what Brendan's doing is going to work.
Absolutely, especially if you change formation. The formation change has to work, and the players have to get confidence in how they're playing. So I agree with the shape. I agree with your back four of Hart, Welsh, Carter Vickers, Scales. Your midfield three, I agree with. Well, if Rio's fit, he would fit in with Kalmack and O'Reilly. If not, be home. I would have your fullback still wide and Maeda up front with Kyogo.
He's playing Johnson. He was hooked at the...
Aye. Just purely because if Scales is in the overlap, all you can do is Johnson could just drop back in and still keep it as a back three, or the other fullback can drop in.
Yeah.
So you've got that defensive thing, because if the only danger with Livingston is they'll do what everyone else has been doing, and they'll try and get corners and they'll try and load the keeper. So we still have to have, for me, a couple of really strong defenders in there, even if we're attacking. And then the thing about it is, if you've got your at least one fullback is your wide player in the 5, it means one of your midfielders, so say Hatate, can really push in as a sort of false 9. So you can really push them forward as much as possible, because you've always got the fullbacks can drop back in and make a solid back 4 again. Because Welsh, I thought Welsh was good against Feyenoord. I think you as well, we've always been pretty positive about Stephen Welsh. I think there's a good player there. And I think he's good bringing the ball out. So again, if he gets caught in possession, your fullbacks can just drop back in.
Mm-hmm.
But I do agree with that shape. I think that shape benefits us better. And I think the reason I would have Kyogo up front with Maeda starting is because I think O offers that different proposition. So if you decide to change shape and pull Maeda wide and take Kyogo off, O's better up front in his own than him, because he can ruffle feathers and get about it a bit more. So that's my rationale. But I think shape-wise, I think we definitely need a change, because it's not been working. And this point, keep it going isn't going to work.
No. Anyone who thinks Palmer could play wing back, he can't. He can't defend.
Absolutely.
I'm playing wingers. I'm not playing wing backs
either. I think he's Haksabanovic. He's Haksabanovic again. I think he's always better when he comes in. When he gets the ball, he either cuts in and shoots, or he gets the ball in midfield and shoots. So just play him there.
Yeah. I mean, my cover in the full-back areas is Scales and Welsh in my formation. When we are being attacked, when we're defending, I wouldn't expect Palmer to do the defending, because, I always went on about El Yunusi. I felt he would have been a great player under Ange, because he did have the defensive qualities. He could break up, attacks really, really well.
Strong as well.
He did. Big and strong, and he did have that knack of cutting inside that Palmer has. But I do think he was a more complete winger. Unfortunately, we didn't see it. Unfortunately, we didn't see Christie that long under Ange either. But I think those two players would have been excellent under Ange Postecoglou. But you know what? Ange is gone, and we've got a group of players there who are good enough to beat Livingston tomorrow. We will cover the game, regardless of what happens. We will be here after the game as well. Let's hope that we are talking about a resounding victory and a performance that gives us a bit of hope moving into Dundee and then Rangers at the end of the year. Thanks everybody for sticking it out. I know sometimes it seems a bit negative, but I think every single one of us, other than the lurkers, want what is best for Celtic. It's always a pleasure to speak to Brian Degnan on a Friday afternoon. Brian, you enjoy your Christmas, and the same to everybody else who can't join us between now and the 25th. Hopefully we'll see you again tomorrow. We'll be covering the game. Thank you to Brian Degnan and everybody else in the comment section for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.